I thought I'd kick off by talking about the background really about entrepreneurship and what it's about and why it's important and why people do it really, because I think there's a lot of myths and I think there's a lot of lack of understanding about working for yourselves or starting your own business and becoming an entrepreneur. And certainly in the university sector, you know, we have an enormous challenge. You know, we're still looking for students, they're somewhere out here, to come along and really participate in this. And we've got some great examples today of people who have started their businesses, but I think it's important to try and get this message across how important and relevant it is in the context of people leaving university and starting jobs. Because today, there's a greater chance of you actually starting a business for yourself, working for yourself, or more importantly, working for a small business than there is working for a large organization. So, just to give you an idea, this is the emergence of entrepreneurship over the last 18 years. And what's been happening is that these are the number of new businesses created every year. So what you've seen is around 2002, we used to have about 240,000 businesses created. And, you know, not surprisingly, as we went into recession, it sort of died there. But, you know, as of 2016, it's gone back up again. The figures for 2018, they're just collating them now. But to think about this, 413,900 businesses have been created every year in the UK, new businesses. That's sort of gives you the impression that entrepreneurship isn't something that's odd, it's now far more mainstream. And of those 413,000, somewhere about 25,000 businesses were created in Wales every year, new businesses. So it really does have an impact on the economy. And if you look at the self-employed, these are people working for themselves rather than setting up their own businesses. Again, you can see this upward trend from what I've done here, just beyond the recession, where people started thinking, actually, maybe I should be working for myself because of the lack of job security, and the lack of employment, and employment was going up at the time. People tended to move towards this. And interestingly, people say that people are forced into entrepreneurship. If you actually survey the self-employed, the vast majority of the self-employed have actually gone into self-employment, not because they were forced to do so, but because they wanted to actually work for themselves or take advantage of the opportunities. And again, what's fascinating by industry, again, for those of you of my age and remember Only Fools and Horses, you won't remember, Jen, because you were from New York, they didn't have Only Fools and Horses on. Tell you then, well, maybe they did. And you know, the impression, the caricature of an entrepreneur was somebody who used to sell things off the back of a lorry or the back of a three-wheel car in Del Boy's case. That's clearly not the case anymore. And what's fascinating is you see where the jobs are being created. In professional, scientific and technical services, administrative support, education, information communication, human health and social work. These are highly skilled graduate positions. You know, graduates are actually starting jobs now far more, and I'll show you some of the stats on this. So what you're getting is that self-employment is no longer something people do when they don't get a job. It's something that people do because they want to do it, and they're doing it in sectors that are actually growing within the economy. And I found this statistic, which is probably the most important one in terms of the role of universities and everybody here who are graduates of universities or actually studying to have a degree. And what you see here, over the last 20 years, what you've seen is that all different types of qualification were roughly the same 20 years ago in terms of, you know, who was starting a business. And yet now you see where the largest growth has been. The largest growth in the self-employment has been in those people who have actually got a degree and gone out there. So again, it's not about choosing to do something because there's nothing there. It's because you can't actually go to university. So if you don't go to university, you can get a job, you start a business. Now it's a very positive thing that people do. So that's about really entrepreneurship standing for yourself. But now, of course, a lot of people get their experience about entrepreneurship from working for small businesses. And again, if you look at where the growth has been in terms of employment per size band, again, there is this tendency for universities to push our graduates towards working for larger businesses. And most of our careers, it tends to be orientated that way. And that's always been the same, not only here, but in every university. But yet, of course, if you look at this, 50% of all the jobs that have been created in the last 10 years have been created by micro businesses. So if you look at where people are going to go and have a job, where they're going to basically get their first experiences, it's actually working for entrepreneurs. So the sort of skills that you need are going to be very different to the skills that you need if you're working for a large business. You've got to be able to multitask, you've got to be enterprising, you've got to be creative. All these different skills are the skills you need. And of course, large companies do create jobs, but at a far lower rate than they used to do 20, 30 years ago. So I wanted to go through some of the reasons why things have changed. And maybe you can identify some of these yourselves in terms of some of the trends that have happened over the last few years. So the first one obviously is new organisation. Why are people turning to self-employment? Why are people thinking of becoming self-employed? Well, first one we've seen is that, and I'm sure most of you have read about this, the issue of computerization, of artificial intelligence, of automation. In many cases, they're stripping out these mid-level jobs. So you've got experienced managers, experienced workers who literally their jobs are being made redundant for them. So there's the opportunity for them to look for different opportunities outside working for other organisations. The second one is that real wages fell from 2018 to 13. Actually fell more than any other period, any five-year period in recent history. Now, it's recovered ever so slightly, and now wages are moving slightly ahead of inflation. But they're still playing catch-up. And again, people are thinking, do I need to work for a large organisation where wages will continue to atrophy, or do I think about working for myself? And similarly, for those who are not working, self-employment used to be a route to sort of developing their businesses if they weren't working. Again, the benefit situation is declining. Pensions are becoming less generous. Anybody working for a large organisation will know this, including in my position. And of course, workloads are increasing. The average workload working for a large organisation has increased over the last 10 years. New mindsets. Not that I like The Apprentice, by the way, but it is an example of how modern culture has embraced it. Dragon's Den, Apprentice, there are these programs there now, but probably doesn't describe entrepreneurship in the way you and I actually know it. So we do this big study every year called the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor. It's been going since 2000. We measure how the adult population sort of perceives entrepreneurship. Things like, do you have respect for entrepreneurs? And what we have found is that, I remember when we initially started doing this work, I was part of the original team 20 years ago, and there was far less respect for entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs weren't considered to be a sort of career that you wanted to go into. Now, entrepreneurs are far more mainstream, so there's a far higher level of respect. So people will choose potentially to become an entrepreneur. There's been a conscious political decision by both the Welsh and UK government to champion self-employment. So we've had things like the Startup Loan Programme that's been established by the UK government. Now the Welsh government are involved in it. And that basically produces or enables new startups to gain up to £25,000 at a very fixed interest rate of about 6% plus mentoring. When there wasn't really any support for startup businesses, it's still an issue, but at least that avenue is there. You've had initiatives like Be the Spark here in Wales, which have been there to sort of promote entrepreneurship across the country. So you've had this sort of decision that on top of entrepreneurs starting their businesses, governments will support as well. Global Entrepreneurship Week, which we're in now. So I mean, my view is it's like Startup Saturday. You know, I go and shop in a local business every Saturday, not once. And it's not about the week of entrepreneurship. It's about doing it 52 weeks of the year. But we do have events like this, which are across 84 countries. So somewhere in Kazakhstan, I would hope that somebody like me standing up there, speaking Kazakhstani, giving the same presentation about how important entrepreneurship is, and we have this global movement. I mentioned these different programs. And of course, where you are today, co-working spaces, there weren't co-working spaces 10 years ago. This wasn't a trend. You had Regus offices, which are service offices, but creating these communities of entrepreneurs weren't actually an option, and you've seen them now all over, not only all over Wales, Cardiff and Wales, but all over the UK. New markets. This is the most fascinating thing about how things have changed, because again, it's mainly service industries that we find, because they thrive because basically you've got lower barriers to entries. You'll hear some issues about this when we talk to our entrepreneurs later, but very much lower barriers to entries, able to draw down talented labour, which wasn't there before. And I think it's this whole idea of being niche. Now, I've been involved with measuring and supporting fast growth companies for 21 years. And the reason fast growth companies work is they identify a niche in the marketplace and they grow that niche. So you may only have a £100 million market, but if you have 80% of that, that's a bloody good market to be in. So it's about identifying those niches. And what has changed, I think, over the last 10 years is this particular statement. Whereas previously we had dozens of markets for millions of consumers, and now you have millions of markets for dozens of consumers. So it's very much orientated to niche, but you have now global reach. So if you're selling a small particular niche market, that niche market now is global. And I think what you find in micro businesses, they're better placed to make tailored products that resonate with consumers' desires and emotions. So you react far more quicker because you're closer to that marketplace. And this is a lecture I've been giving for 30 years. What's the difference between large firms and small firms? The small firms actually understand and work with and reflect the needs of their clients and customers. Large firms tend not to, because they're away from that. And they instinctively understand what customers need, where large firms tend to rely on market surveys that take 12 months and give them the wrong answers. A new population in how young people are getting more involved in this. So 16 to 24-year-olds, self-employment increased by 74%. And this is part-time work. So many now are choosing either in university or work for themselves to do their side business, to actually undertake entrepreneurship on top of what they do already. And that gives them that step in. So it's not a matter about taking that plunge, it's actually working potentially for somebody else or being in university and starting your side business that may or may not grow. And that's where you see a growth in self-employment. This is what's going to happen. You know, whatever happens in the US, it comes over here in the next 5 or 6 years. You look at the trends there, and that's what tends to happen. So, freelance workforce grown by 57 million over the last 5 years. A third, basically, of the workforce in the States now is involved in freelancing. So we'll see that shift coming here. And so it's a matter of how do you get those skills. So you've got a 7% growth versus 2% for non-freelancing. And why do they do it? Again, are they forced? With all the surveys that you've seen is that nearly 2/3 choose to become freelancers. And that's increasingly prevalent amongst young people. And the reason why, because millennials, other generations, apart from mine, Generation X, so you get what you actually see is Generation Z and millennials, they choose the lifestyle over work. So the most important thing to them is what is going to be their lifestyle and can their work fit into that, not the other way around. So that means they are choosing employment in a very different way. So self-employment will increase, entrepreneurship will increase as well. A new technology, Third of self-employed people not being started business have recent advances in technology. We see that those businesses with a strong internet presence actually grow twice as quickly as those without. And these, I think, are the interesting things. So if you look at things like manufacturing, 3D printers have put manufacturing into the hands of the many rather than the few. That sounds like an election slogan, doesn't it? You might get 3D printers for everybody by the end of this campaign. And then, of course, platforms such as eBay and Amazon. I mean, now we talk about eBay millionaires. And why do we talk about eBay millionaires? Because people have actually gone online and created their business. You don't see them as actual businesses, they're virtual businesses that have actually used these platforms to sell, to start up their businesses, and more importantly, sell globally. And these are businesses that weren't here, 15 years ago. And yes, these are the businesses now that are driving many of the economies that we see. They're the sort of unicorn businesses that we talk about. But all these were started by entrepreneurs 15, 20 years ago, and now they're global businesses. That just shows how things have changed. Everybody thinks entrepreneurship is about this. It's about making money. It's nice to make money, obviously. We all like to make money. But if you look at why people do this, this is a study in the UK, which was a study of a whole range of businesses by the Federation of Small Businesses, and asked people, why do you start up a business? Why do you become self-employed? Half said they wanted to fulfill a personal vision. 80% said they wanted independence and work, i.e. they didn't want to work for the man or the woman. They didn't want to work for somebody else. And then nearly 2/3 said they better work-life balance. Money didn't come into it at all. And then I'll show you something in the end. This is a list of the fastest growing companies in the US. They do a survey every year. So these are the real fast growth businesses that create, billions of pounds of revenue, create thousands of jobs, and these are all the entrepreneurs who started. And they asked them, why did you start their business? So 30%, 29% said it suited their skills and abilities, 20% wanted to be their own boss, and 18% said they had an idea they want to try. So very similar to what we found in the UK. 11% said they wanted financial success. So of these fast-growing, successful businesses in the USA, just over 1 in 10 said, actually, I started a business because I wanted to be rich. That comes as a consequence of being successful, but it wasn't the driving force behind this. So, again, going back to where I started and thinking about what sort of skills, it'd be interesting if you thought about, if you're going to start your business or you're in business already, what sort of skills are actually asked for by employers. So this is a survey that goes on, and they asked employers, what are the sort of skills you now want? So there's an assumption that you will get your degree in nursing or engineering or law or business or creative industries, that you will have that degree and you will have the technical skills. But what other skills are employers looking for? And if you look at these are all related to enterprise and entrepreneurship: leadership, communication, teamwork, negotiation, problem-solving leadership, perseverance and motivation, ability to work under pressure, and confidence. So what we find now is that what essentially employers are looking for, never mind if you're going to go and start up your own business, they're looking for entrepreneurs or people with entrepreneurial skills to be employed by them to make a difference in their organization. Anybody want to start naming these for me? Let's start here. Anybody recognize this chap here? You can't say better, you know them all. Anybody? No, Richie, you can't either. Now we'll come back to him. Anybody recognize this lady here? No, Richie, stop it. This gentleman here? Lady here? Any of these? Okay. These are the most successful Welsh entrepreneurs, and nobody recognises them. So, Sir Terry Matthews, who set up, basically, well, Mitel, I think, has made £1 billion 3 times. I think he's sold it twice and bought it twice. He owns the Celtic Manor. He's developing the new ICC building. So Sir Terry, born in Newbridge, in Gwent, which is why his first company was called, one of the companies called Newbridge Networks. Hayley Parsons set up Go Compare. Yes, you've all heard of Go Compare, I'm sure. You know, she doesn't have a moustache, as you can see. So Malcolm Walker, he set up Iceland. Now that's the biggest company in Wales, bigger than Admiral, bigger than GE. So Iceland, which essentially is a frozen food shop, that is the biggest company in Wales at the moment. Lady Mary Perkins, who's got bad eyesight like me, set up Specsavers. She was a student at Cardiff University, or actually as it was then UIST, and she was studying in Cardiff and met her husband and set up Specsavers. Sir Michael Moritz, Sequoia Capital, investors in Google, PayPal, Apple, you name any of the tech companies. Mike Moritz was actually born and educated here in Cardiff. His mother still lives in North Cardiff. I went to visit Mike, and there's a place called, if any of you know about tech, it's called Menlo Park, which is where all the tech entrepreneurs and the venture capital houses in Silicon Valley are. And he's an interesting character. But he said to me he has this fantastic building, and underneath the stairs there they had a desk, and I said, why have you got a desk under there? And he said, that's where Sergey Brin and Larry Page, the founders of Google, that's where they started, because they couldn't afford an office, and in those days there weren't any co-working spaces. So actually we stuck them under the stairs and we got them to start writing their algorithms there. He invested $20 million into Google, and 2 years later sold his share for $1 billion. So this man is the tech guru. By the way, he got a degree in history from Oxford. Knows bugger all about tech, but shows a lot, doesn't it? And this lady here, the final one, probably the first prominent female entrepreneur, which is Laura Ashley, who set up a factory in the middle of Wales, in Carno, and set up a global brand, and was probably one of the first truly global creative fashion entrepreneurs to come out of the UK. So these are all Welsh entrepreneurs, and you didn't know about them, which shows we're not doing our job properly. So you do now. Before I leave, I just want to give you 2 hints, right, for those of you interested in entrepreneurship. These have been my Bibles for 30 years. I just wish we had something similar in the UK. So, 2 websites, Inc.com, Entrepreneur.com. So these are the 2 main magazines in the USA. The Inc. 500, this is what I based my Fast Grow 50 on 21 years ago. This gives you a list of all the it's actually 5,000 largest companies in the US. And I'll tell you what's really interesting. If you are in a particular sector, go and have a look to see what's happening there, because you'll have companies who are doing very similar. See how they've grown. And again, with entrepreneur.com, there's an amazing, you won't find, it's a treasure trove of advice. So that's, I think, is another place where you want to go. So I'll finish off with my hero. I found a video the other day of Steve Jobs talking in 1985. I'll see if I can post it. Richie can send it on. I mean, he was an odd bloke, but can you actually think of anybody who's actually created so much and invented so much and changed the world so much with entrepreneurship and business? The only other person would be Josiah Wedgwood, but that's a story for another day. And I think this is the most important quote that I've taken from Steve Jobs. And it's basically about, I'm not going to read it out, but it's about doing what you love and enjoying your life and working because you want to do it. And I think if you can do that, then that's the most important thing. And I think that's probably the message that we're going to get from some of our speakers today. So, thank you. So.